I don't think I would do anything over. I really don't.
We are looking into all aspects of mob involvement.
He was shot at least 3 times in the head. Someone definitely executed him.
I heard 5 shots though. Bang, 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 bang.
He took 7 in the head from a .380 automatic and died right there in his own driveway.
When I looked there, I just couldn't believe my eyes seeing the blood on the street.
There have been 13 rub-outs in New York this year, and police fear there may be more.
I don't want to say nothing because I don't want to, you just get in trouble. I'm around here 25 years and I learned one thing. I don't know nothing, I don't see nothing, I don't say nothing. That's it.
Organized crime experts say the killings are a sign of big change in the mob.
It's the connection between organized crime's violent activities, including murder, and some of its more seemingly innocuous activities, such as sports and horse gambling.
What we see now is the equivalent of a corporate shakedown. You don't quit the mafia. You don't resign and you're not fired. If you're the loser in a disagreement, you're generally killed.
The FBI and New Jersey State Police today arrested 22 alleged members and associates of the Genovese mob family, with conspiracy to kill the reputed head of the Gambinos, John Gotti.
What we see now is the equivalent of a corporate shakedown. You don't quit the mafia. You don't resign and you're not fired. If you're the loser in a disagreement, you're generally killed.
The majority of these top people...
In a crackdown, federal law enforcement officials claim finally is beginning to hurt traditional organized crime in America.
Killing John Gotti, people going to jail conspiring. I'm sure somebody wanted to kill him, but it takes a certain extra degree of balls to go kill a guy like that in the street.
Rocco James Napoli from Brooklyn, New York. I met John Gotti. Yes, I did. Right, regular guy. Parked in the handicap spot, and I got handicap plates. Crazy.
If you could describe Rocco Napoli, how would you describe him?
Big-hearted guy who definitely talks too much.
Cocky, arrogant. The kind of a guy that I would say would look for a fight rather than stay away from it.
You cross him, he'll punch you out. Stand-up guy.
Anything else?
Rocco was a real nice guy, but he got involved in some stuff.
And they were right there on the second floor taking pictures.
I mean, he was actually a real good client to have because he wasn't real nervous.
Was Rocco a member of organized crime in some way?
He was the head of Local 21. It was a labor's union in Jersey City, New Jersey. And he did some other things I found, I came to fruition later on that I found out as I got older.
Who was your father?
James Napoli.
James Napoli. What did James do for a living?
He was self-employed. That's what we told in school.
Sure,
he was
yeah.
a bookmaker.
Bookmaker.
Yeah.
Napoli was a well-known organized crime figure out of Brooklyn.
He ran Queens and the neighborhood and half of New York.
He was part of the system of gamblers.
He was reputed to be the guy that ran the biggest gambling operation in the entire country. I've seen it estimated at anywhere from like 35 million to 150 million.
He was one of the most famous gangsters, out there.
And that gave him the license to do whatever he wanted to do with the gambling. He was awarded all the gambling business from New Jersey, California, New York. He was the kingpin.
Jimmy Napoli, the Mr. Big of illegal gambling in New York. The police say he's a captain in the Genovese crime family. In 1976, Napoli was jailed for controlling a $100 million numbers empire.
Everybody knows him as Jimmy Nap. Jimmy Nap, he is their super banker. He makes money and earns for all the crews. He takes care of the numbers, he takes care of the sports betting.
In this country, gambling is almost a birthright of gangsters. They have the expertise. There's no one in this country that knows gambling better than organized crime.
He ran it like a corporation. You know, you put him in as a CEO of a company today, he would have probably done very well and very successful. To run a business like that and to make that kind of money and connections and respect, he could have done anything he wanted.
In our little neighborhood, there were guys that didn't go to work during the day.
You had the boys, the men of respect, and they kept that neighborhood clean.
There was no crime in Brooklyn, no crime in Williamsburg. Uncle Jimmy and the guys took care of that. Anybody did something wrong, they have to answer to them. Forget the cops. Cops never came around. They didn't need to.
It was a normal life. To be frank with you, it was a normal life, and never knew what your father did. And then you got older, you found out. He was a father like every other father, just a big heart. We all had to eat together as a family at a table, and on Sundays, everybody would be dressed up to eat dinner.
He came over at a young age with his father, Antonio Napoli, horse and carriage days. My great-grandfather was a bricklayer, and he was a hard-working man. He believed in hard work. And that part of those values did get instilled in my grandfather and passed down.
He was a bull, but a gentleman. Overprotected of his children and his friends. He went above and beyond to help people.
I just found out recently from a friend, that's a friend of my uncle's that grew up in the neighborhood, said your grandfather, if a house burnt down, it was a house that burnt down in Brooklyn in the neighborhood, he bought them new appliances. They were regular, they call them citizens, they're regular people. They don't want nothing in return. He sent people money for college, kids in the neighborhood, and you don't have to be connected or have to know a guy. Like, he just did stuff like that.
And he wouldn't take any recognition from it. Don't tell them I sent this to them. If they needed money or something.
I haven't heard one negative thing about him. I can't even find a negative thing about him on the internet. It's amazing in that world.
But he also had a vicious part in him. In Florida, I got into a little trouble there with a Cuban girl. A little fine, her and I. But I didn't know she was married. And her husband found out, come looking for me. I got shot at. And my sister found out. She called my father. My father came to Florida with Tony A. Can't mention his name, he's alive. I can't mention the other guy's name because he's alive, and I will not do that to my father's friends. But Tony Andrews is dead now, so I mentioned he came with Tony Andrews and a couple other people. Oh, Freddie Vigorito, he's dead. And they drove around in my car, so the guys who were looking for me would see the car with the top down and everything. And he put me and my sister on a plane back to New York.
All right, here. Yeah. He lived across the street from me. Your grandfather, your grandmother, my grandparents. We went to parochial school together. We went to high school together. We got arrested together. We did everything together.
What part of Brooklyn are you from?
Williamsburg.
What was Williamsburg like when you were growing up?
Just beautiful. Just beautiful.
The 50s, 60s, it was a magical place. My wife always tells me I over-romanticize it, but if anything, I don't give it enough. It was just a great place to grow up.
You didn't have to lock your doors. You went to sleep on the fire escape at night, because it was so hot, nobody had air conditioners.
The neighborhood was very Italian, Irish, Jewish, Polish. It was clean. You know, there was Mo, he had the Jewish deli. There was the brothers, they had the Italian pizzeria. And it was all family-owned stores. Everybody knew each other, and there was no crime.
There was a thing called the Nicky Newark days, where even if you hung out on a corner, you had to dress up. You had the Italian knit, the high roll collar shirt, the high water pants, the roach killer shoes, you know, and you just hung out on the street corner.
You ever have to kill anyone?
I can't even, yes I did. I killed quite a few people. Yes I did. I must have killed about 30 guys.
How?
With an M60 machine gun, with a 45, with a bayonet in Vietnam.
We joined the Army. I thought we were going there for him to join the Army, but that didn't happen. We were on the boat in the Army. And he said, we're going to Germany, and Ralphie goes to Vietnam, and Rocco goes to Korea. But guess what? I came home and went to Virginia. He went to Vietnam. He's the kind of freaking hero.
Well, I went into service in 1964. And then after that, I walked across the street to the other compound, and I joined the Ranger Division. And I put in for Vietnam. So I told my father, and he was upset with it. So I had 30 days home before I had to go to Vietnam. His wife, Jeannie, says to me, your dad is very upset about you going to Vietnam. I said, well, everybody's got to do their bit, you know. Just make sure you're home for dinner tonight, Rocco. He wants to talk to you. Oh, we're having dinner and everything. He says, come on, let's go in the den. And there's a one-star general and a full-bird colonel. And they says to me, listen, well, your dad don't want you to go to Vietnam, so we're gonna fix it so you can go in the hospital. I said, Dad, what's this about? He says, I'm not gonna have you go to Vietnam and get killed. And I told him, I says, I'm not comfortable with this, Dad. I wanna go and do my dues, and whatever it is, it is. He said, all right, Rocco. You sure? It's there for you, son, it's there for you. I says, I'm positive, Dad. And then I reported to Fort Dix, and I reported January 2nd, 65. And I went through 8 weeks of infantry training.
Do you remember the first time you had to kill somebody when you were in the Army?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was in 1966. That's when I went over to Vietnam. Just beginning of 66. And we were stationed in Da Nang with the helicopter division, 180 assault helicopter division. And I was a door gunner, machine gunner. I was on guard duty that night. And we got overtaken. They tried to come in and rob, and they come right over our dugout where we were, you know, in the foxhole. And I had to kill a guy with a bayonet. And we dragged him in the foxhole and just slit their throats, just like they showed us how to do it. Stick him back of their neck and twice, and they're instantly dead. Yes, I remember that. Very vividly.
I mean, somebody comes after you, you're not gonna go after him before he gets you? No, you probably wouldn't, but that's not the way it was then.
How was it?
I'll get you before you get me.
You were always looking over your shoulder. You didn't know, you had to watch where you were going at night. Your life was in your hands, and you depended on your fellow brother, whether he was black, white, southerner, or whatever, you know.
How did that make you feel? Do you remember?
Yeah. I really didn't feel bad. because I was protecting the guys who were sleeping. So I did my job like I was supposed to, like I was trained to do. And really, I had no regrets on it because he was going to kill me. No matter what, either he dies or I die, or my partner dies in the foxhole.
That's a part of my life. Everybody. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. And you didn't know who you killed. And you weren't going to go there and introduce yourself. It was kill or be killed. And when they called us, I don't want to get into that part of it. So let's forget about Vietnam.
When he came out of the service, he came to work on construction. We worked with the bricklayers, you know, mixed mortar. The bricklayers laid the brick, and we supplied the material. We were laborers, local 21. But we became friends, working together. Later on, he became a delegate, and he placed the men to the job.
Because the previous business manager got killed in the Union Hall.
Did you have people working for you?
Yes, I had Frankie Vigiani. He used to take the numbers for me. And Janet Mastropiostra, she used to take the sports bets for me.
When he gave me the job, he said, Anthony, no stealing, no drugs, you know? And he ran a clean ship when he was, I thought, when he was the business agent.
He treated me like his own son, got me a job on my summers off from college. He would put us to work, and we built Harborside, the financial district downtown Jersey City. At one time, downtown Jersey City, you didn't want to live down there, you didn't want to buy a brownstone down there, you didn't want to do anything.
So I had all these ideas. We had to build water lines, sewer lines, electric lines, new roads, construction, highways, bridges. When you're putting all that infrastructure into the city, that involves organized labor. All infrastructure work is done by organized labor because it's technical in nature. So the operating engineers were involved. Once the operating engineers were involved, it involved most of the other trades. And the building trades union was active because they didn't have a lot of work.
Him taking me to the construction job sites a lot. I had to be like 8, maybe 9. I mean, I liked doing that. When school was out and we had summer, we didn't do daycare. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So yeah, I would go to the job sites when I loved that. Meeting all the guys. It's funny because when I got older, these same guys are the guys I worked with. So I saw like him going to each job site. I saw little envelopes. I saw guys kissing them and the respect they had and buying me food and candy and giving me money and put in my pockets. Because all his people that would do things for him worked on all the job sites. And he was the business manager and he would go around.
Structure was ex-cons. I mean, all the guys I worked with were in jail for one thing or another.
But, you know, to me, they were friendly. You know, I never had a problem with them. No one ever threatened me. No one ever asked me. I did what I thought was right. You know, I tell them what I was going to do.
The Genovese family, they ran the fish market in Lower Manhattan. They ran the Javits Center when that was built on the west side. There was construction. There were unions. The waterfront in New Jersey and Brooklyn and Manhattan was divided up between the Genovese and the Gambino families.
Organized crime and organized labor. Many union leaders deny that there is any connection, but Brian Ross has talked with a lot of people who say there is.
New York City. In the last 2 years, a boomtown for people in the construction business. More than $1 billion in major projects, giving the mob control over thousands of jobs and millions of dollars in union dues and pension money. In one case under investigation, Builders had to buy all their wallboard from mob-controlled dealers at greatly inflated prices or risk union slowdowns and strikes.
There's a guy named Vincent Cafaro who was in the Genovese family who flipped, became a government witness, and he testified before Congress. And he, said on the record before Congress at a hearing that the biggest weapon the Genovese crime family had was the unions. It allowed them to make money off of, every building that went up.
It was the way of life. It was the way things happened in Jersey City. Hudson County has a reputation, and we live up to that reputation.
They had what was called the concrete club, where the 5 families would add a certain amount of money for every yard of concrete that was poured. And this was just built into the cost of making a building. So if you're putting up a 70-story skyscraper, every bit of concrete that goes into that, a piece of it is going back to organized crime. And that was one where the families kind of collaborated.
Brownstones at the time in the early 80s were going for $15,000, $20,000. Now that same brownstone is over $1 million. You can't go 2 blocks downtown Jersey City right now without a high-rise being built. Now New York is looking at our skyline. We used to go down there to look at New York skyline.
I tell you, the money to be made was unbelievable. The money I was making at the time. Just so happens I fell into a couple contractors. At that time in Jersey City by the Holland Tunnel, they were building like crazy there. But why should one contractor have the whole loaf of bread? So all I do is mention, I didn't know it was big rigging. Look, you bid on this job, let them know what you're bidding. And then the next job, you go higher, he goes lower, so he gets it, and everybody eats. And they agree to it. Yeah, you're right, Rock. Me, I got caught for big rigging.
The contractors were coming into Jersey City and what union was going to put how many people to work. So they made deals.
He did well in construction. He worked. I'll give him that. Then when he became the union rep, he made more, and then I'm sure he made more in tables too. Let's put it this way. We had a nice lifestyle. I was fortunate enough. I had 4 children and I didn't have to work.
In terms of New York City and gambling and rackets and organized crime, it starts out sort of disorganized. It starts out with random protection rackets on the street and is going to move very quickly into gambling. Gambling is almost a national obsession.
I asked him that question in my 20s. How did he get into this business? And he told me he was working in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. When after his father died, he quit the 5th grade and went to work as a riveter. He used to use the sledgehammer to bang in the rivets. One day, this big black dude came with a burlap bag, he told me, and there was nothing but pennies in it. We'll put a penny on a number, 2 cents on a number, and he used to go around and collect every day. And he asked one of the guys that was working with him, what's in that bag? Why are people giving him pennies, And they explained to him about the numbers that you get from Aqueduct Racetrack, the total mutual handle.
It's generally conceded that the numbers racket is originated in Harlem among the black population there. And then very quickly, there are people like Dutch Schultz who come in and people who protect him who are in the Tammany organization, the Democratic organization running New York City politics. And so everybody gets a cut. The gamblers get a cut, the politicians get a cut, and of course the police get a cut.
He said so. He decided it was an easier way for him. So he took the burlap bag from the guy and he says, tell your boss to come and see me. And he was only 18 at the time. Maybe younger, I don't know. And that's how he started, taking numbers. He became a banker, the biggest banker in the country.
Well, instead of the lottery, it's what the boys have, the mob have. They have numbers. They take numbers.
It was common for your father to wake up in the morning, get the daily news. He turned the paper over, he opened it up, and he looked for the number.
Pick 3 numbers, put money on it. Odds, 500 to 1. Used to be 600.
You put your money down. Maybe it's a straight bet. Maybe it's a box hit, as they said, which would pay a lot less. If you had a straight hit, you'd win somewhere between 50 or 60% of the total take or on that bet. The odds would be 500, 600 to 1 because the odds would be 1,000 to 1 that you would win. So you might put down a quarter on a straight hit. You might put down 10 cents on a box. And a box hit would be that the numbers would show up, but maybe not in the order that you had bet them. And that would pay a lot less.
All the money that's bet at the racetrack,
the last 3 digits of that total mutual handle was the number for the day.
My sister, she had a job to bring home the Mirror. I had a job to bring home the New York News on a Sunday. There were big, thick papers then those days for 25 cents on a Sunday. And my brother Joey had a job to bring home the Journal, okay?
The numbers racket is now a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business, and police say there's no major city in the country without a thriving operation.
This is a numbers parlor, and these people are breaking the law. But police say the game is so popular, the law is impossible to enforce.
Daily number was a thing that transcended race and, economic level. Don't forget that there was a time when, New York State or New Jersey did not run the lottery. That was the lottery back then.
There was a guy outside by the phones dressed as a bum. And he was searching the phones for change. And my father told the hack that was watching him, the cop, give him $5 for his pocket to get a good meal, And the hack gave the guy $5. It was an FBI agent. I gave him another 5 years. And that's when he went to Lewisburg. The judge says to him, he says, Mr. Napoli, the government wants me to hit you with a RICO Act. I'm not. He says, because you're doing the same thing that the state of New York is doing, but they have a license. They're booking, because they opened up the stores to play the number, play the horses, OTB parlors, right? He said, but you don't have a license. But you have 200 men working for you. That's 200 people off of welfare and unemployment. So I'm just going to give you a 5-year bid, and I'm sorry to even do that. But he had to do it, and he stayed within the guidelines.
In that era, the police were like funny and dumb. I mean, what was wrong with that? They do it in Las Vegas. They do it in any other place.
Truthfully, no. When I want to play, it didn't stop me. I don't hurt nobody. It be my money I'm playing. I don't take anything from anybody.
Right here in New York City alone, we employ 100,000 people regular and 400,000 part-time.
He'd either call on a phone, or in our neighborhoods, usually the hot dog man would take the numbers, or certain stores, grocery stores, candy stores, things like that.
And you'd walk in and it'd be funny. There'd be like no candy. It'd be a candy store with like a couple pieces of candy and like one soda. There was no inventory. They were just selling numbers.
It's not hard to find a place to bet, like this phony discount store. Inside, the only thing for sale is a numbers ticket.
I remember guys would run and get the newspaper, and the guy would get the thing, could be like, World War II starts. Nope, they wouldn't get it. They'd run to the number and go, oh, shit. Should have played a combination. You want a paper, kid?
All right. How much money you got? Don't you want more? Everybody gambles. Everybody.
It's similar to what we have now. Every day you go to the to your local candy store and you play a number, a 3-digit number. It is similar. It is, except they paid a little bit better, and they were more reliable.
The game is so popular, 11 states have cashed in with legal versions of their own. New York, which operates 3 lotteries, will add numbers this fall.
You know, the mob lottery in some ways was just a lot more honest. You paid your money, you got paid in cash.
They like to bet with a bookmaker because the bookmaker give you credit. Track won't give you credit, you gotta pay cash. So if the guy only has $50 in a pocket and he makes a $300 bet, but I'll give it to you Friday, they take it to bookmaker.
And that eventually evolved into a shylock, or a shy as they call them. And they were the guys that would lend you ridiculous rates of interest. Forget, not as bad as the credit cards in this country, but no, they would, usually you would give, you would pay what they call juice.
You come and you want to borrow 500, right? Okay, what do you want to do? How long are you going to take you to pay me? Well, I know I need 500 for a couple of weeks. All right, so you charge them 5 points. So 5 points on 500 is what? $50? They give you $50 a week, that don't come off. You still owe the 500, that's just a vig. Or you can give them 3 points. Some people buy the money, like me. They come to me, Rock, I need 10,000. Okay. And I said, what are you gonna do with it? Well, I'm gonna put it in the street. All right, I'll give it to you for 2 points. And he put it out for 4 points or 3 points. He paid me my 2 points, my 2%, or 1%. You know, if it's a large sum, like anything over 10, yeah, give me 1%. And he used to put it out, and he used to get his 3 or 4 points, you know, and pay me.
Did it matter what the guy was using the money for when you would loan
Yes,
out?
it did. You'd be surprised that we had like a code. What do you need the money for? Well, I want to put it in the street. Okay. Or if it wasn't for the street, I want to pay bills, I want to catch this, I want to buy a car, and I'm waiting for a check to come in. Okay. If a guy says, oh, I want it for drugs, get out of here. Wouldn't do it. Would not do it because that implicates you into loaning him money to go get the drugs. And that's a RICO Act, and that's a conspiracy. And we stayed away from that. I had contractors, subcontractors, that needed money because you put in your requisitions as a sub to get paid. They don't pay you to the following month. Now, sometimes those subs needed money to pay the men. They had to pay the men or they stopped working. The union comes in and everything, right? So, just so happens I fell into a couple contractors, subcontractors, that needed payroll every now and then. Well, how much you need? Well, I need about 75 grand for payroll. Well, I don't have that kind of money. I said, I can't help you. But I know somebody that has that, but they charge it. Oh, yeah, I know, Rob. I know. It's okay. Well, I can't vouch for you. I don't know you. I give you my word, you're this, I'll give you a point. No, I don't want nothing. I'm not going to deal with this. I'll have somebody come and see you.
They would lend you the money, and you'd have to pay the VIG. Now, if they gave you $10,000, you would settle up on a VIG, so you would have to pay back $11,500, and in a certain amount of time. You know, you just it wasn't leisurely. You know, when you got paid from your job, you made sure that you stopped by the deli or the local, and you paid your share to knock down what you borrowed.
And what happened to some guys who didn't pay back their loans?
I don't know.
You break your word, things happen. You can't break your word.
Regarding drugs and organized crime, I grew up in an area where it was common. Loan sharking, gambling. My mom's job, everybody did it there. It was a way that when you live in the inner city, it's how you live, it's how you survive, because people don't have money, you know, so you kind of learn to be empathetic that way. You know it's a crime. In the end, you know, it's my job, I do what I have to do, but in the end, they do what they have to do also.
What happened if somebody didn't pay on their bets or if they didn't pay back any loans?
Nothing. People say they get busted up. It's not true. Because what's the sense of beating somebody up? You make a rat out of them. Now, other people do that, don't get me wrong. But the organization I was affiliated with, we didn't do that. All right, what can you do? You can't bet no more. What can you afford every week to pay this down? Why make a rat out of the guy? Why you beat a guy up for money? It doesn't make it. Then he's even. Once you put your hands on a man because of money that he owes, He's washed out. He doesn't know anymore. He's already paid with his life.
You know that scene from the movie Goodfellas? At the Copa? That was just like us.
Thank you, sir. All right, see you later. Thanks.
What are you doing? You're leaving your car?
Watches the car for me.
We'd go in through the kitchen to the front, and they'd set up tables right in the front. Was I sort of, like starry-eyed? Yes. Because I never lived a lifestyle like that.
What do you do?
What?
What do you do?
I'm in construction.
You don't feel like you're in construction.
No, I'm a union delegate.
We got married in the Plaza Hotel. 750 people. Did I know them all? No, they were my father's friends. We had Enzo Stawati as our entertainer with 40-piece orchestra. Before we got married, President Nixon's daughter got married there. And there was a big article after we got married in the paper. How come the President of the United States had to give a guest list and give a deposit when Jimmy Knapp, all he did was give a handshake? Well, the general manager of the hotel says Jimmy Knapp pays his bills. The government doesn't.
I said, my father can't pay for this. He says he wasn't asking my father. He told my father that he had to have a big wedding. So I told my father, I said, let him do what he wants. Dinner seatings for the FBI. He said, tell him to go on and eat.
Yeah, we had Fred Marcus. He was the top photographer in Manhattan at the time. And my dad says to him, who's these other photographers? It's Jimmy, I don't know. And my dad approached him. Hey, come here, you. Yeah. Who are you working for? Oh, Mr. No, I'm working for Mr. Marcus. And they pulled out their badge, the FBI agents. He says, get all you guys together, go in that room. And he fed them. Fed who? Fed the agents. Go down, sit down, enjoy the wedding. Don't take any more pictures. I got enough photographers. Next time he went to jail, actually, I think it was because of my wedding.
Gambling, bookmaking. Him and my uncle went at the same time, his oldest son. But he was under surveillance or under investigation for a fight that might have got fixed.
In New York, an investigation of alleged corruption in professional boxing resulted today in 3 grand jury indictments against boxer Frankie DiPaula and 2 men identified by an assistant district attorney, Larry Goldman, as figures in the mob or mafia. They are Joe Calabro and Jimmy Napoli.
In the fight racket, he was involved in promoting boxes, backing boxes.
The fixing of boxing matches, of course, is seriously connected to the mob.
He was big in the fight game and big with a lot of managers, and there's tons of surveillance photos of him at Madison Square Garden with Cy Creasy.
But in this particular case that I became aware of, he was accused of fixing a fight between a Frankie DiPaula and a champion middleweight by the name of Foster. And this guy was a champion, and they told him to take a dive.
This is for the light heavyweight championship of the world. Bob Foster, there's Frankie DiPaula, and the bout is underway.
At the time, Frankie DiPaula was a middleweight. And he had a fight with Dick Tiger. Well, it was a great fight. It was an absolutely great fight. He stood toe-to-toe with Dick Tiger, and it come to a draw. Well, that got him a shot to see Bob Foster. But that didn't really get him that. My father got him that. He was fighting in the armory. All of a sudden, he gets hooked up with Jimmy Knapp, and he's fighting in Madison Square Garden. Dick Tiger, then to Bob Foster. Dick Tiger should have had the shot for Bob Foster, not Frankie DiPaula.
And so this is where the mob came in. James Napoli
He was the sort of man who made the rules and he enforced the rules. He was an undercover manager, an undercover promoter, and an undercover matchmaker. So he was fundamental to the way fights were made. Around 1967, Frankie was classed as a D fighter. Basically, he sold his soul to the mob. In return, the mob indulged him with money, with girls, and a ticket to Madison Square Garden, but it came at a cost.
1 minute and 5 seconds left to go in round one. Neither seem much of a knockdown, but both are hard hitters. With solid punches, DePaula down again for the second time. Mandatory 8 count, he's on his feet. One more knockdown and the fight will be over.
DePaula agreed to take the dive, but in the passion and emotion of the fight, he might try to win the fight. So they broke his hand with a hammer. And he could have won the fight, but they didn't want him to win the fight.
There it is. There it is, it's all over. DePaula down for the third time, and he doesn't seem badly hurt at all. None of the knockdowns of DePaula seemed a crushing one. He doesn't seem badly hurt.
On the face of it, there's a lot of evidence to show that it was fixed.
They wound up killing him about a year or so later for something.
He was dating someone that he shouldn't have been, and he was warned.
She was the stepdaughter of Martin Casella, one of the biggest mob figures in Hoboken.
And they had rules. You don't fool around with a wise guy's wife or a wise guy's girl or daughter. There was a lot of respect amongst, not like it is now.
And he went to her house one day and there was a note on the door that said, "Come around back." He went around back, and as he got around back, he got shot multiple times. And then people were brought in for his trial. My grandfather was accused. His manager, Gary Garofalo, was accused.
And they went before a judge who was begging for the case, which they are not supposed to do.
What happened to his organization when he went to jail was you start losing territory. When you're not out there earning, keeping track of your inventory, let's say, and your employees, he had to put someone in place that could oversee his operation. And that's why I'm sure he joined the family, you know, the Genovese, and they can now protect his investment because now they have a stake in it too. It's like an incentive program. We saved Jimmy Knapp's area because he was good at what he did. He's a good earner. He'll kick up and we make our money. So we're gonna protect his area for when he comes out. You know, when you're away a couple times, maybe 5-6 year bits, it's hard to hold on to it.
So when he went to jail, what happened to his business? He handed it over to me.
Police say Napoli's numbers game may be a little disrupted today, but it'll probably be business as usual by next week.
The reason that my dad put me in charge of his empire, he said, "Rocco, you're the only one that went out and started your own thing. You took over the union without permission. I don't know how you did it. You started a number business. I don't know how you did it. You started a sports business. I don't know how you did it without me knowing." He says, "And the men love you, no opposition for 19 years as business manager." He says, "So how can I give this to your brothers who worked for me that never did anything productive like you did?" And that was successful about it.
My dad himself has told me that when my grandfather went away, he went away also with my uncle, who was the oldest. And my grandfather wanted to only trust my dad with that operation. You know, my dad also was in the union, so he was good with managing money and dealing with people and problems. So my dad pretty much ran that and kept it alive. And my grandfather had some close friends that loved him and respected him that made sure his business stayed intact.
My dad had a very dear friend of his, and they had him so-called the concierge of the Genovese family. Okay? I was with that man for 20 years in Jersey. I knew him, I hung out with him, I did things with him, and he was like my second father. And in my trial, they made it look like he was prepping me to take his spot for the family. And he was moving up with my dad, with Vincent Gigante, who was supposed to be the boss of the family. And they used to call him, well, you couldn't say his name, he just went like this.
What's a made guy?
A made guy is, by the government theory, is when you go and somebody sponsors you to be confirmated, they call it, get confirmated again, or communion again, whatever they decide to call it that day.
You have to be full-blooded Italian to be a made guy to let in. Difference between a made-wise guy and a soldier who's not a made guy yet.
Yeah.
It's not a.
And then you got the other where you're an associate. You know.
Or you're on record with.
And you go and you sit there with the guy who's sponsoring you, which has to be a made guy who's sponsoring you, with 2 other people. And they give you, according to the government, a religious card. And at the table, there's alcohol, cotton, and the religious card you're supposed to put in your hand and burn it, according to the government. And after that, they prick your finger, your trigger finger, and they put alcohol on it so it don't get infected. And they put a Band-Aid over it, and you take a sworn oath of that you're die for that family. They're the first people. That's what the government's theory is.
Did you ever have to go through that?
I don't really want to answer that.
Okay.
Basically, you have the boss of the family, and then you have the underboss, second in command. It's almost like a paramilitary structure. And under the underboss, you have the consigliere. Some consiglieres have no power, and some have some power. It's like a flow chart. And under the consigliere, you branch it all out, and now you have a capo, let's say 5 capos. And under those capos, now they'll have their own crew. Under them, they'll have made members. And then under the made members, there's another flow chart, and it's gonna have associates. And those aren't made members, but they're associated with guys. And they could be of any race, they can be whoever, but they're people that do business with the made members. Orders flow down, information flows up. It really is like a business structure. Everyone kicks up and answers up, and the ultimate boss gets the piece of everything. But he also takes the biggest risk.
And it's all about paying homage. If you're an earner, they'll take you in. You're an earner, they'll take you in. They won't necessarily make you, but nowadays they take anybody in, not just Italians. As long as you're earning and making money with you, doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, let's make money off this person.
Casella's. That was like the home base.
It was our favorite restaurant to come to in Hoboken. We had mayors in here. The mayor, Steve Capiola, was in here with us, you know.
That was a restaurant in Hoboken. Mr. Casella, God rest his soul, he was the owner of that restaurant. There must have been mob activity if the government saw fit to bug it. It was a hangout. I would say it was a mob hangout.
Anybody ever get killed here? Not here in the restaurant, no.
Civilians think, years ago I used to hear on the street, oh, people, there's wiretaps everywhere. Little did they know, it doesn't happen that way. People think everybody's listening. No. It's costs money to do that. And you need people to be listening to all those conversations. What you first do is you gather intelligence. You suspect something is going on, you gather intelligence. And then once you build enough evidence, we speak to the assistant prosecutor, who will then say, okay, now you do it, or this is enough evidence.
We're on Monmouth and 2nd Street in Jersey City, just around the corner from the Columbus Club. This was my coffee shop, the Village Coffee Shop. This is where the FBI raided and took out Trolley Car, DK, Fingers, and a couple other guys when we had our problem. They had it bugged. They had microphones underneath the counter, on the phone, and they used to sit right up there. They rented the rooms above the liquor store. It used to be a liquor store, now it's Metro, PCS, and they used to film everything to this corner.
The coffee shop, I used to work in there.
I did it in the morning for like a couple hours, and I went to work. But there for a while, though, I was, I worked there all the time. But then we got busted. They busted up and they closed up. That's it.
There were rumors on the street. It's funny, in these neighborhoods, you hear rumors. People know people knew people, law enforcement, there's gonna be an indictment coming down, okay? So, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what they were talking about, but it makes sense now that everything happened. I was going to work, because I would go down Newark Ave, and I looked over to my right, my dad's coffee shop. I saw all FBI jackets and New Jersey State Police. I was like, ooh. I was on my way to the job site. I pulled back around, I called, and an agent picked up, don't remember his name, he's like, this is Special Agent blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, there you got him.
I was living in Secaucus in an apartment. It was a one-bedroom, fireplace, nice, And bang on the door, bum, bum, 5 o'clock in the morning. Now I was getting up to go to Union Hall because that's when I used to get up to get to the Union Hall for 6 in the morning. And I said, who is it? FBI. FBI. Oh my God. I said, all right, I'll be right with you. I gotta get dressed. No, you don't have to. Oh, yes, I do. And the reason I did that, because under my bed, I had a .32 pistol. And I already had the word that they were watching us to be careful. So in my closet, there was a trap door, a little slot with stairs, and I threw the gun down there, and I closed it back, put the rug over it, and I opened up the door. There was FBI, local police, state troopers. What is this? I said, what are you looking for? Dillinger? And they hit me with the subpoena, they searched the house, get dressed. They dressed me. I wanted to just go with a pair of suits. No, wear a suit like you're gonna go to work. Yeah, they dressed me up for the cameras.
Rocco was charged with, different from a lot of the others, he was charged with several different counts of what we call labor racketeering. That means that they charged him with using his position as a union official to commit crimes, essentially. They also, however, charged him in the overall RICO conspiracy, which was, very serious, and also charged him with 2 different murders, and attempted murders in the case.
Rudy Giuliani was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, based in Manhattan. He sort of rode into town as, you could pick your metaphor, white knight or a new sheriff. He targeted Wall Street. Very active guy. He indicted Bess Meyerson, the former Miss America. But as an Italian-American, he had a particular fascination with organized crime. And he was one of the first prosecutors to use the RICO laws, the racketeering laws, to bring major cases against the mob in New York. And actually, perhaps most famously, he brought a case against the mob's ruling commission, the heads of the 5 families, some of their underbosses. This is not long after, the FBI had denied that there was a Italian organized crime organization in this country. And Giuliani indicted the heads of all the families, which was an enormous case that he won. Mike Chertoff worked in Newark at the time. He's gone on to bigger and better things. Very aggressive guy. He's a smart guy, good lawyer, did well for himself. When he was working over in Newark in the U.S. Attorney's office there, His boss was Sam Alito, who is now a Supreme Court justice.
The FBI and New Jersey State Police today arrested 22 alleged members and associates of the Genovese mob family with conspiracy to kill the reputed head of the Gambinos, John Gotti.
What we're saying is we've taken that group down, and what occurs hereafter will determine whether or not it's been crippled or not.
Justice Department officials say the only way to control the mob is to keep pounding away at it day after day.
I didn't know who got locked up. And when I got in the Army, I seen everybody. Oh my God, they picked up everybody. They went to my coffee shop, picked up trolley car, Fingers, Richie Cusimano, Janet, she used to do my sports. Frank Vigiani, he used to do the numbers. Flores guy, who used to take the numbers. Vice president of my local was there, Albanese. And they're all sitting there, oh my God, did I cause this, you know?
Okay, I got let go. A lot of other people got let. A lot of the laborers got let go because they were there to shape the work. You know, I never thought that would have happened. I figured everything was on the up and up. You know, it was a local guys going to work, shaping up in the morning. I mean, what's illegal about that? But since it was the FBI, they were handcuffing who they wanted to handcuff. You know, and that was it. That started the trial.
Why would there be a conspiracy to kill John Gotti in the first place?
Well, they believe because he was supposed to kill Paul Castellano without permission. They called it some kind of commission, that he didn't get authorization from the commission to kill Paul Castellano. So we, the Jersey Fashion, got the contract, they say, to put a hit on and take out John and his brother Gene.
John Gotti, and he did it more like a rebel, you know. He was out in the streets and he was a banshee. And the people around him were banshees, and then you had other people like Castellano and Gambino and Bonanno, and they basically were more reserved. They were more businessmen. They were definitely we seemed more like businessmen rather than, you know, wild gangsters.
One man in bathrobe and pajamas, the other in $2,000 suits.
The styles don't match. That means somebody's going to kill somebody. That means somebody's going to overpower the other.
Gigante decided at a point, maybe in 87, 88, that he just wanted to get Gotti killed. Vincent Gigante, he's a guy for whom just having the position was in and of itself enough. He lived in a small apartment with his mom. You know, he had a modest house where his wife lived with his family in Old Tappan, New Jersey. He didn't have a big flashy car. He wore a bathrobe instead of a suit. So for some guys, the power is enough. He's a good example of that. Just being the guy is enough for some people. And Bobby Manna, who was the consigliere, was kind of given the job.
Tough guy? Absolutely. He was a tough street guy, John. Gentleman? Yes, he was. Family man? Yes, he was.
He was the most famous gangster of the 21st century.
Yeah.
You talk about, you heard of Al Capone 100 years ago. Gotti had his picture drawn.
Time magazine.
Yeah, by Andy Warhol.
The Teflon Don.
Yep. I mean, he was charismatic, he was brash. He always said, I'm either going to die in prison or die in the streets. There was no in between. He knew it.
He knew his time was limited. His son-in-law said to me at one time, John Gotti Sr. said to him, I got about 4 or 5 years left.
Yeah.
They're going to get me within 4 or 5 years. I mean, he knew his time was limited. He was marked. He was
But they
marked man.
love that life. They love that life of, my God, you walk down the street, you go into a club, a restaurant, everything opens, everything opens. It's like, you know.
You don't pay for much.
No, no.
My thoughts going into the case, I knew right away from the get-go that there wasn't going to be any plea bargain reached. That was not something that the government was interested in discussing for their own reasons. I knew it was going to be a case that had to be tried, and had to be tried in front of a jury. First of all, jury selection took weeks. I mean, when the jurors are told of the allegations in the case and what kind of case it is, a lot of them all of a sudden couldn't serve. And as a matter of fact, this case was the first anonymous jury that was ever used in the state of New Jersey. And by that I mean, normally when you go to court and you're a juror and your name is Joe Smith, they call you as Joe Smith. In an anonymous jury case, the jurors were assigned a number and everybody knew them as a number. Now, us defense lawyers had a little bit of an issue with that because we thought right away from the beginning, if you tell a juror, do not use your name, you're only a number, you know, you're sending a message that these are a dangerous group of defendants. So we had a problem with that. But it was permitted as it had been in some other states. One of the guys would bring in bread from Hoboken every morning to the case, so I'd go home every day with a bag of really good Italian bread. The other thing that I still remember is I got a call from a local Cadillac dealer who wanted to set me up with a car, and I refused, but you know, that's just something that pops into mind after 25 years.
My trial, okay, it was a 4-month trial, a little over 4 months, under Mary Ann Trump Barry.
Who is the sister of Donald Trump and the daughter of Fred Trump. Well, it's interesting because my dad is a union official, Local 21, almost 20 years, as a business manager. John Barry, his name was, is the husband of Mary Ann Trump Barry, and he was actually like a union labor attorney and did work for my dad's union in the past.
Now, I hired John Barry because I was the head of the District Council of Labor's. So I know John Barry for over 10 years. And when his wife became a federal judge, we bought a table to go there at the inauguration, you know? So my lawyer, Mike Saluka, I asked him to ask her to step down because I know her husband, conflict of interest. No. She wouldn't do it. She said she could handle it. That she don't see there be any problem. Well, she stayed within the guidelines. Michael Chertoff wanted her to go up, and she refused to go up. And my theory on that is because there was a project going on in the 50s, Left Rack City in New York. Now, her father was a builder, Freddie, and him and Left Rack were building Left Rack City. Now, he went to my father for help because there was other contractors and other people trying to muscle in on him. And my dad was friendly with a lot of people, and he gave him some assistance to keep the wolves away from him. So I think that's why the judge was lenient on me. That's my opinion. I don't know. As soon as she seen my father in the courtroom, she let him out. And her father was in the courtroom that day when she done that.
This was a case that was based not so much on direct testimony, but a lot of it was based upon surveillance videos and more particularly surveillance audio tapes. where they had, essentially bugged the village coffee shop and the Casella's restaurant.
The Kiwanis Club used to have their meetings in the back room, and that's where the bugs were, in the back room. And they took some conversations from the Kiwanis Club and they put it to ours.
And they used it in the trial?
They used it in the trial. Marty was also involved in my case, and he got 80 years, but he died in Leavenworth.
He went to jail for what?
And he owned this for bookmaking and for murder and for conspiracy of murder.
The transcripts that were offered by the government as to what was on the wiretaps, when you actually listened to the wiretap conversations, it was very difficult to make out what was said on those tapes. The allegation was that they were enhanced, in a natural way so that they could be heard, but they were fuzzy tapes. If I told you what a sentence was, you could hear it on the tape. If I told you a different interpretation of what that sentence is, you could hear it on the tape. Part of the defense in the case was that we claimed that those tapes were not what they seemed to be because of the quality, which was really poor, really poor. There was a murder of a businessman in New York named Irwin Schiff, who was killed at a restaurant.
Irwin Schiff was a businessman who, he had limousines, he had a generator company, he had a trucking company also. And Irwin Schiff had a problem. And he went to someone in the Genovese family to help him with a problem with someone in the Gambino family, where John Gotti came from. And the guy went to him and says to him, you can go to sleep at night, everything is okay. Well, 2 weeks later, he was in a restaurant with a blonde eating dinner, and she seen the guy in a doorway, about 6 foot, black hair, Italian looking, stocky built, Apparently, the guy in the doorway went to the table, seen Irwin Schiff, and shot him 3 times. And walked out like nothing happened.
And during the trial, it was a big deal because they actually had the woman who was dining with him the night he got shot and killed. They actually whisked her into the courtroom as a surprise witness, blonde-haired woman.
So she was in the courtroom. He says, can you point the gentleman out? She says, yes, I can. So my lawyer looked at me, he said, Rocky, you're the only one that fits that prescription, I said, well, it wasn't me. She picked out Richie DeCiccio. His name is Bocci. Now, he only weighs about 150 pounds, soaking wet, and he's 6'1" with light brown hair, not dark brown hair, and he does not look like an ex-fighter, a roughy guy, far from that at all.
How many years was your client Rocco facing?
Facing, believe they said 120 years if you added everything up.
I was charged with financing, labor racketeering, 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of conspiracy of murder.
Some of the other defendants, unfortunately, got 80-year prison sentences. Fortunately, I guess, comparatively speaking, for Rocco, he ended up getting about 6 years and a couple of months.
My grandfather was on the case and was excused. He was excused for health. He walked right out of the courtroom. And then, 80-something years, and then I get to my dad, they give him 7 years, 6, almost 7 years. I read the transcripts and I heard some of the tapes. My dad was on the transcripts a lot, talking. My grandfather was on a lot. And one walked out the courtroom and the other one did 7, and no one ratted, of course, and they did their time, so.
In a crackdown, federal law enforcement officials claim finally is beginning to hurt traditional organized crime in America.
An obituary for the mafia is premature, but in much of America, where it once controlled governments and judges and labor unions and gripped entire businesses in its vice, the mob clearly is losing its hold.
These guys live by their word. They don't sign nothing. They walk around the block and the deal's made. But if you make a deal and you shake hands, it's like signing a contract.
My father always told me, anybody that puts their hands on you, leave them for dead, we talk about it tomorrow.
Guilty verdicts today in the federal trial of a group of mobsters accused of being the top bosses of organized crime in the United States.
We have now proven in a court of law beyond a reasonable doubt, not only that there's a mafia, but that there's a commission, that it runs the mafia.
They wanted to know information about Jimmy and others, and I wouldn't talk. So they put me in for 10 days. They put me in jail. I'm a Catholic priest. We're not supposed to reveal it. We all got out together, and then they drove to a section of the South Bronx, which was the end of the neighborhood, and we walked right through the neighborhood, all these people, like heroes. We just got out of jail.
What was it like once you got into prison?
Oh my God, it was like being back in the service again. How can I explain it? It was bad, it was degrading. It was degrading. You had to get up, they tell you what to eat, what not to eat, and the fights, the beatings guys got. It was like being in the service again. And it set off something in my head that my parole officer sent me to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist asked me what's going on. And I got nightmares, I get this about Vietnam, about my childhood, all from coming out of prison. I thought about Vietnam when I was in there. I have to watch my back, have to watch my side, have to watch my front, just like I was back in the service in Vietnam. They gave me post-traumatic stress disorder, 100% disability. That's what I'm living off. My Social Security and my pensions from the union. My dad was in jail plenty of times. He was in Sing Sing, Raybrook, Ashland, Kentucky. He was in Lewisburg Penitentiary, where I was also. It just seems like every place I visit him with my kids, I wind up being in those same prisons.
What was your fondest memory with him?
Going to the beach, going on vacations with him. My saddest memory, when I lost him in 1992.
It was a somber day. We kind of knew his health was failing and he was older, but I do remember distinctively, which really bothered me, it was the first time I think I heard my dad cry.
I was authorized to go. I was all dressed up, my son set me in a suit and everything to go. And the day I was supposed to leave, the warden denied it, and they put me in a hole for 30 days. I wanted to grab him by his neck. Okay, that's what I wanted to do, and wring it like a washcloth. Because he had no right doing that. Once the warden, the assistant warden already approved it, the case manager approved it, and he just wanted to play his politics as a boss. That's all it was, as an authority figure. I just needed one more day with my father.
If he was sitting here with you today, what would you tell him?
It's not what I would tell him, it's what he would be telling me. I told you not to do this, I told you don't get involved with this. But my dad blamed himself, and I just wanted to tell him, it's okay. When he used to come up and visit me, he used to get sick, that he put me there. I said, no, you didn't, Dad. You didn't put me here. You couldn't trust nobody but me, you said it yourself. For 5 years I ran his business with his friends and things that happened. And that's when the government picked up on me. I used to watch my father walk, talk, how he presented himself, his likes and his dislikes, you know. And I always wanted to be like that.
Who took over the family business when he passed away?
It went, that was it. When he died, that was it. He always told us, when I go, the business is over. That's why he wanted everybody to be successful in some kind of legitimate business, because he didn't want it for any of his sons.
He never once, like you see in movies, he never says you're gonna take over or you're gonna be involved in this. He didn't want it. He didn't want it for my dad. And my dad's the youngest of them all. He didn't want my dad involved at all, but it turned out, it's funny, the one he didn't want involved at all is the one who was involved the heaviest.
What did you want to be when you were 10 years old?
I wanted to be a lawyer. Seriously, I wanted to be a lawyer or a dentist, you know.
Why?
Well, it was pumped into me from my father. I want you to be a professional, man, a lawyer, a dentist, a doctor, and that's how I grew up to want to be.
How did it feel when your mother passed away?
I was devastated. And it was the ruination of my life. That's why I went that way. You know, I was on the right track at that point in my life.
Towards the lawyer and the doctor track?
Yeah, I went the other way because she was like the backbone of the family, because Dad was always away. He was on the lam. And she was always the one that got us up for school, get us out.
Everybody makes choices, and you come to crossroads in your life. You find yourself getting sucked in, not the mafia or whatever. It doesn't always have to be so grandiose. It starts in a slow progression, you know, it's little baby steps. You get to a point where you have to make a choice. Is this what I want to? And that's when I said to myself, you know, this isn't for me. Remain friendly, but remove myself. Other friends of mine jumped in with both feet.
I mean, come on, did I see it? Absolutely. Did I hang on the corner? Occasionally with these guys. But I could see the guys that were going to grow up gangsters. Anytime I've been on the fence in my life, where if I would have gone this way, bad. I went this way. Why? Because of the way I was raised. When it came to that point in time, I made the right choice. Right choice. I screwed up a lot, but I didn't end up in jail. I didn't end up in prison ultimately. These guys, all bets were off.
It was in my blood from seeing my father and the way he acted and the people and the things he could do and the things he could help people with. I didn't see anything wrong with that.
Did you ever feel the urge or the want to return to what you...
Of course I did. I always wanted to go back.
And you're so used to something, it's kind of like human nature, you know? You're so used to a certain pattern, you continue to do it. I've never seen anybody stop anything.
I couldn't go to New York or New Jersey for 5 years. I had to stay away 1,000 miles. And yes, if I could have went back, I would have went back.
It's called Metro Glass. And, what is it with you, officer? What is it with you? How you doing, Mark? Good. You going to the hotel? Yeah, later on. Okay, I'll see you there, buddy.
When you're born, it's so written how you're going to die and when you're going to die. That's the only thoughts I have on it. I escaped it quite a few times, in the streets and in the service. You're on borrowed time here.
But always been kind of on your bucket list?
I can't answer that. There's a couple things on my bucket list that I will have to do before I die.
Such as?
Hey? I don't even want to go there. All right? Because that's an intent, and I can't give myself up. But there is a couple things on my bucket list that I have to visit, and I will do it before I die.